Happy rise and decline to all who celebrate. Here are the top stories for the day, Tuesday, April 21st, 2026. In multipolar rise top news, U.S. estimates Iran has 70% of pre-war missile stockpile and 60% of launchers. As Iran warns of decisive response to any U.S. ceasefire violation. And Iran forces unauthorized tankers to retreat from Hormuz Strait, while dozens of Iranian Shadow Fleet tankers breach U.S. blockade. And China defies oil shock as war on Iran disrupts global markets. And in Empire in Decline top news, Jared Kushner's financing is largely ignored amid Iran diplomacy role, while Iran claims ownership of Lebanese gas field after establishing Gaza-style yellow line near border. As Hamas dismisses U.S.-backed disarmament plan as collective suicide. Japan officially eases arms export rules to allow weapons sales despite protests. And Mexican President Sheinbaum demands answers after the presence of U.S. agents in Chihuahua. Those are today's top stories. Please subscribe at risedecline.substack.com. And if you're able, please support by being a paid subscriber too, or sharing the Rise and Decline report. All right, let's go below the fold here to Empire's war on West Asia. When I made the screen cap, it was at $95. Now it's at $98.20. It being Brent crude per barrel. If reports emerging of refineries around the world seemingly mysteriously catching fire. Seemingly. As in, I don't know what the data's like in the past. But over the past 45 days, at least 6 major incidents have been reported at critical energy facilities across 4 continents. 4 continents! From a fire at Ecuador's largest refinery to an explosion at a plant in Russia and a blaze at an Indian refinery just hours before its scheduled inauguration by the Prime Minister. Folks, it may be time to put on that tinfoil hat because there do be conspiracy theories and there do be conspiracy facts. Trump defends Iran war in series of posts on Truth Social. Issued a series of posts whether defending his war with Iran and a potential diplomatic deal that he may reach with Tehran, though the state of the negotiations remains unclear. Trump said in a post, he started with a post, where he said that the state of Israel didn't talk him into launching the war, an apparent response to the reports and commentary about how Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu played a major role in convincing him to launch the war. And Trump's war messages loom insider trading suspicions. It's great use of the word loom there. Peaks in trading volumes have occurred before U.S. presidents made statements. An analysis of trading data across several markets found a pattern of spikes in trading volumes hours or even minutes before the president made market-moving remarks via social media or media interviews. These movements were often followed by sharp price fluctuations. So you could take a peek here. Let's look here at Brent crude. Just the last, month. You see how it goes up and down and up and down? These little peaks and rises. Every single peak and rise is an opportunity for these investors to do market manipulation. Every single time. They can make money when the line goes up or when the line goes down, depending on how they do it. U.S. and Iranian negotiators set to arrive in Pakistan for new talks as ceasefire nears expiry. Trump threatened Tehran with overwhelming military force, saying lots of bombs will start going off if no deal's reached. Just regular demonic stuff, I guess, right? Russia backs the CPOA framework as benchmark for Iran nuclear deal. Lavrov, Russian foreign minister, tells Al-Mayadeen that an Iran-US deal resembling the JCPOA would be a major success. Kushner, Jared Kushner. His financing is largely ignored amid Iran diplomacy role. That's right. Jared Kushner is leading U.S. diplomacy. He's facing scrutiny over Saudi financial ties while leading U.S. diplomacy with Iran, as most media outlets overlook the conflict of interest. To Iran. Pakistan Army chief tells Trump U.S. blockades obstacle to peace talks with Iran. Pakistan's army chief told Trump by phone the U.S. blockade on Iranian ports is a major obstacle to resuming talks between the U.S. and Iran in Islamabad. And again, U.S. estimates Iran has 70% of pre-war missile stockpile and 60% of launchers. Despite claims that the U.S. has significantly degraded Iran's ballistic missile program, U.S. intelligence estimates Iran has access to the vast majority of its missiles and launchers. Iran warns of decisive response to any U.S. ceasefire violations. Remarks following U.S. capture of the Iranian vessel in the Sea of Oman yesterday? I think. It all blends together, doesn't it? And Iran announces new Hormuz restrictions after U.S. ceasefire violations. Restricting maritime traffic in the Strait of Hormuz, introducing controlled passage and increased surveillance amid escalating tensions with the U.S. Iran's forcing unauthorized tankers to retreat from the Hormuz Strait. 2 vessels sailing under the flags of Botswana and Angola were forced to turn back after Iranian warnings after attempting to sail through the strait. That's ballsy. And dozens of Iranian shadow fleet tankers breached the U.S. blockade, says a report. Maritime traffic data indicates ongoing shuttle tanker movements across the blockade line, calling into question the effectiveness of U.S. enforcement. What are they doing? Are they spoofing or what? To Lebanon, where displaced Lebanese again warned not to return to Israeli-occupied South. While the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire is holding across most of the country, the far south area of Lebanon occupied by Israel continues to see some limited fighting and a massive amount of destruction as the systematic destruction of towns and villages by Israeli forces continues. Hezbollah PFV drones pose shocking threat to Israeli troops occupying the south of Lebanon, says a report. These FPV drones, capable of reaching much farther targets than more traditional weapons such as anti-tank missiles. Good for them. Israel claims ownership of Lebanese gas field after establishing Gaza-style yellow line near the border. Tel Aviv has openly vowed to destroy all Lebanese border villages and prevent their residents from returning. It's ethnic cleansing. To Palestine, where Hamas dismisses U.S.-backed disarmament plan as collective suicide. Palestinian officials say the proposal aims to ignite civil war in Gaza as Tel Aviv escalates pressure, restricts aid, and continues deadly attacks. Imagine a U.S.-backed disarmament plan for the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, while allowing and even helping the Nazis to keep loading the Jews onto trains to Treblinka. Just imagine that. That's what we're living through. Israeli attacks kill more Palestinians in Gaza as Hamas clashes with Israeli-backed militias. Israeli-backed militias. The IOF continued its constant violations of the U.S.-backed Gaza ceasefire Monday by launching attacks across the Strip as an Israeli-backed militia also clashed with Hamas-aligned fighters on the ground. An Israeli-backed militia. The fuck? Israel has armed and supported several militias and gangs that are based on the Israeli-occupied side of the Yellow Line. Largest group called the Popular Forces started as an aid-looting gang led by Yasser Abu Shabab, a known smuggler who was killed last year. He was replaced by Ghassan al-Duhaini, who was previously a member of the Army of Islam, or Jaish al-Islam, not to be confused with a Syrian group with the same name. This is a Gaza-based Salafi jihadist group with a similar ideology to Al-Qaeda that declared its allegiance to ISIS in 2015. Salafi jihadists. Curious. Where did that come from, you guys? Where does this Salafi jihadism come from? Huh. Wonder if the U.S. has anything to do with that. Anyways. Jewish fundamentalists increase attempts to smuggle animals into Al-Aqsa Mosque for sacrifice. And I just heard you say, what the fuck? Yeah. And you're not even on the mic, and I heard you say it. What the fuck? Extremist Jewish leaders, including several government ministers, aim to demolish Islam's third holiest site and build a temple there to prepare for the Messiah's arrival. They're trying to smuggle... Are they trying to do the red cow thing or what? Amazing. There it is. Animals such as an unblemished red heifer should be sacrificed to purify the site before the temple is built, according to some interpretations of Judaism. This is insane. The purification ritual involves the use of ashes from a sacrificed red heifer, red yarn, cedar wood, and hyssop, mixed with fresh spring water collected by ritually pure Jewish children. What the absolute fuck? My fucking God. West Asia and North Africa, where Washington cuts flow of U.S. dollars to Iraqi central bank until acceptable government is formed. We're sort of leaving the Empire's war on West Asia category. We're just talking about the world now. Washington opposes both Mohammed Shia al-Sudani and Nouri al-Maliki for the post of prime minister, which has not been filled for over 5 months since parliamentary elections. You guys, they coup with tanks, and they coup with banks. Pakistan cancels $1.5 billion weapons deal with Sudan. Should I be saying Sudan? After Saudi Arabia pulls funding. Last year, the two countries signed a comprehensive mutual defense pact treating an attack on either country as an attack on both. They had their own NATO Article 5. And now they're pulling out, I guess. To the Asia Pacific, where the U.S. and Philippines launched their biggest ever Balikatan drills with large Japanese contingent for the first time. The Japanese. Getting more into imperialism here. China condemned the drills, saying the world has seen enough damage done by unilateralism and abuse of military might. On Monday, Chinese Foreign Affairs Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun warned that preventing the resurrection of militarism is Japan's due obligation and the unwavering will of the international community. So now the militarization of China starts making more and more sense, doesn't it? Japan officially eases arms export rules to allow weapons sales despite protests. Uh-oh. Japanese government officially revised, quote, the 3 principles on transfer of defense equipment and technology, and their implementation guidelines on Tuesday to allow overseas sales of weapons, including those with lethal capabilities, despite waves of large-scale protests, local media reported. Oh, wow. Western man. Which way? Will you turn? Will you turn to Japan, or will you turn to China? Seems there are two kinds of Western men. Of course, women and they, thems. Anyways. These revisions, Japan's government revisions here, scrap rules, historic rules, that limited Japan's defense equipment exports to 5 non-combat categories, namely rescue, transport, warning, surveillance, and minesweeping. But all these things, of course, subsidize the combat categories, thereby not excusing Japan's contribution to U.S. imperial hegemony. However, here we are seeing them make a more overt turn towards their imperialist Japan past. Japan defies oil shock as war on Iran disrupts global markets, according to CNN. CNN's having to admit that the commies are doing a better job of weathering this storm. China's weathering the global oil shock triggered by the war on Iran due to years of energy diversification, large reserves, and reduced reliance on any single supplier. Yeah. That's what it's like to have leaders that care about people. Their people, at least. You can't imagine that living in the West, can you? You simply can't imagine that. If you live in Europe, if you live in the heart of empire, it's impossible for you to imagine what having leaders who care about you would be like. You don't even know. You can only pretend. To Europe, one of the world's biggest mistakes. Spain, Ireland, and Slovenia urged the EU to discuss suspending its association agreement with Israel amid growing political pressure. The EU-Israel Association Agreement governs political dialogue and economic relations between the European Union and Israel, including preferential trade arrangements and cooperation across multiple sectors. Let's be clear. The EU has a EU-Israel Association Agreement. So that's the EU for you. Suspending the agreement would represent a significant escalation in EU policy, potentially affecting trade flows, diplomatic engagement, and institutional cooperation. So you see now, hopefully if you don't already, that Israel has historically been supported by Europe. Got some sock them calling me a campist right now. It's hilarious. To Hungary. Hungary's incoming prime minister says ICC warrant will be enforced if Netanyahu enters the country. Now, raise your hand if you've been following my coverage here, because I talked about this a few days ago. And Hungary's incoming Prime Minister, Peter Magyar, and Benjamin Netanyahu had a friendly conversation in which Magyar invited Netanyahu to Hungary. So if you think to yourself, oh, this is so good, you're sort of falling for it. Magyar said his government would fulfill its obligations as a member of the ICC to arrest Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu if he entered the country. I have no idea what level of chess Magyar's playing, but he did say he invited Netanyahu to Hungary, and then he also said Hungary would arrest him. Seems like a contradiction, But then again, I think they don't care about this issue at all, and their foreign policy's amateur. Hungary's about to slide towards neoliberalism, you guys. And you have liberals clapping their fucking hands over it. Because this guy Orban sort of reminds them of Trump. Not to say I like Orban, but goddamn. The EU is suspending ammo supplies to Estonia. Washington is limiting arms shipments to its allies because of the U.S.-Israeli war on Japan. And every time I think of Estonia, I think of that funny clip, that funny quote. I can't find it. We have historical migrant regularization beginning across Spain, excluding stateless people. Spain launched an extraordinary regularization process for migrant individuals yesterday, facilitating work and residency permits for thousands who arrived before January 1st, 2026, aiming to integrate them formally into the nation's social and economic fabric, though the exclusion of stateless people sparked immediate controversy among advocacy groups. This measure represents a significant step towards legal inclusion for a substantial segment of the population, but obviously it's not without its faults. Stateless people. What is a stateless person? I'm not even 100% sure. Can I become stateless? What does that mean? Does that mean you're born right on the border of two countries? This doesn't make sense. All right. Reading on. Elon Musk ignores summons to appear in French court. His social platform is being investigated for failures to curb illegal content. Open in January 2025, the judicial investigations examining charges of complicity in the possession and distribution of child pornography, as well as excess use of artificial intelligence to create sexual deepfakes without consent, including that of children. I want to be very clear here. Elon Musk profits from exploitation of children, sexual exploitation of children. And that bitch can sue me. I don't give a shit. Fucking hellhole. Ireland to offer cash to encourage Ukrainians to leave. Irish government aiming to terminate government-provided accommodation for Ukrainian migrants within a year, and will offer payouts to encourage repatriation, says the Minister of State for Migration. Dublin has shelled out nearly €400 million in political, humanitarian, economic, and non-lethal military aid for Kiev. Yeah. It's not exactly the Ireland you might want it to be. It says, while other EU members have funneled billions of euros into the conflict. Russia's warned that the EU's support for Ukraine's only served to prolong the hostilities. I think the long short of it is that some Irish leaders are growing tired of subsidizing Empire's war on Russia. Oh, man. Then you have Eurovision 2026. Says over 1,000 artists call for boycott of normalizing Israel's genocide. More than 1,100 musicians and cultural workers have called for a boycott of the 70th edition of the Eurovision Song Competition over its inclusion of Israel, amid growing pressure to ban the country over its genocide in Gaza. But don't you dare call Israelis Europeans. Don't you dare tell Israelis to go back to Europe, because that's anti-Semitic. Or something. The fuck? These like international competitions are really just weaponized against the global south, aren't they? Same with World Cup right now. Olympics. They just weaponize it against the global south and enemies of empire. If you don't notice that, I think you're a baby. But then again, I didn't notice it until recently, so I should be more patient. We have dozens of Israelis detained at Moscow airport over war on Iran. Moscow's literally more European than fucking Israel. Moscow's Europe. Russian security forces reportedly told the Israelis that enemies of Iran are our enemies as well. And he was in the right. Yeah, as a former baby. To the Americas. And I do want to pause and say, if you have a better geopolitical term for this, please let me know. I'm flexible on changing this. I sort of want to, I just don't know what to call it. But to the Americas, where Mexican President Sheinbaum demands answers after the pressure of U.S. agents in Chihuahua. There were U.S. agents inside a tiny Mexican dog. Can you believe this? How did they get in there? That dog must have been mad. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum announced on Monday that her government will seek explanations from Chihuahua State and U.S. authorities regarding the participation of 2 U.S. security agents in an operation conducted on Mexican territory. Apparently, they died in a crash. The ambassador had to say something about it. A car crash kills 4 officials, including 2 U.S. officials linked to the embassy, revealing secret anti-narcotics operations. So, Sheinbaum goes, I didn't know this was happening. Except she did it with a Mexican accent. She's soliciting answers from the U.S. Embassy and government of Chihuahua after 4 officials, including 2 U.S. officials linked to the embassy, died in a car accident following an anti-narcotics operation. They're CIA dudes doing alleged anti-narcotics ops. It's bullshit. It's pro-narcotics ops. We know how this works. The accident inadvertently revealed previously unknown cooperation between the U.S. Embassy and the state of Chihuahua in Mexico, with Sheinbaum stating in a press conference Monday that her government did not have knowledge of the direct participation of U.S. officials in operations with the state of Chihuahua. A journalist reports 2 personnel killed were CIA. Mexican leader said her admin does not authorize joint actions of that kind inside Mexico at any level, with collaboration limited to intelligence sharing. Bullshit. And that joint work must be carried out under a strict framework of respect for sovereignty. Imagine asking Empire to respect your sovereignty. You don't ask. You force them to, as Iran is showing us. Mexico passed strict legislation in 2020 that requires all collaboration with foreign agents receive prior authorization at the federal level. That's why she's pretending like she doesn't know. The president ordered that information be gathered to determine whether legal provisions were violated. U.S. Ambassador Ron Johnson, I almost said Ron Jeremy. U.S. Ambassador Ron Johnson acknowledged the incident, expressing his condolences in a post on social media. Meanwhile, the State Department declined to comment. You might be wondering why I have Ron Jeremy on my mind. I had a coworker talking to me about it the other day. She goes, I never had sex with him. And then she goes, he can make his penis hard and then soft. I'm like, how would you know? If you didn't have sex? It's the strangest conversation. Very strange. All right. Then we have the U.S. boat strike kills 3 in the Caribbean. Just murdering people in the Caribbean. The bombing campaign has killed at least 181 people, all civilians, since it began in early September. Yep. I'm not sure what you're saying, Ross. What do you mean? And then U.S. Labor Secretary Chavez de Remer resigns amid probe. Reporting cited internal communications involving personal messages and requests sent to junior staff by Chavez de Remer, her aides, and family members. According to reporting cited by the New York Times, her husband and father exchanged messages with young female staff members. Yikes. And Russia condemns U.S. pressure on Cuba and Nicaragua. Remarks on the U.S. remarks. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Evgeny Ivanov accused the U.S. of exerting strong pressure on Cuba and intimidating Nicaragua and other countries in the Western Hemisphere, framing these actions as part of a renewed neocolonial Monroe Doctrine. Should I refer to the Americas as just simply the Western Hemisphere? Do you think that's an accurate geopolitical term? I think that would work. I could do that. And Venezuela begins national pilgrimage to demand end to sanctions. Authorities will organize a marches, assemblies, and cultural events in all 24 states ahead of a final activity in Caracas, April 30th. All right, everyone, let's do a quiz. How many states are there in Venezuela? How many states are there in Venezuela? That's correct. There are 24 states in Venezuela. If you're like me, you just learned something today. So that's great. All right. Those are the stories from today. And on this day in Empire. Sort of a tweak, as you may see. Tweak this a little bit. On April 21st, 1914. I thought this was a timely piece of history here. In 1914, what was this? 112 years ago, on this date, U.S. Marines occupy Veracruz, Mexico. They'll stay for 6 months. Wait, weren't we just talking about? Anyways, the Battle of Veracruz and the illegal U.S. military occupation of Veracruz was a military conflict between the U.S. and Mexico that took place in the Mexican port city of Veracruz between April 21st to November 23rd, 1914. Well, here's another quiz. I didn't tell you this one yet, but what U.S. general led this occupation? This is a trivia. Not a quiz. This is trivia. What U.S. general led this occupation? The incident occurred in the midst of tense diplomatic relations between Mexico. No, not Teddy. Although Teddy was a general? Am I forgetting that? The incident occurred in the midst of tense diplomatic relations between Mexico and the U.S. related to the ongoing Mexican Revolution. It began with an occupation in response to the Tampico affair of April 9th, where Mexican forces had detained 9 American sailors. Wait, why are they there? Further worsened relations and led to widespread anti-Americanism in Mexico. All right, I'll tell you the answer. General Smedley Butler. You can see pictures of him and his other friends standing in Veracruz. There. Senior officers of the 1st Marine Brigade. You got front row left to right. Colonel Wendell C. Neville.
Meep.
You got John A. Lejeune. Whoa. Oh, that's who they named the Lejeune. You got Colonel Littleton W.T. Waller.
Meep.
And Commanding and Major Smedley Butler. Is this guy on the end here looking the other way? Smedley Butler? Yeah, you may know that war is a racket, and he wrote it. He wrote the book. So U.S. Marines and soldiers continued to garrison the city and until the U.S. withdrawal on November 23rd, which occurred after Argentina, Brazil, and Chile became involved. Known as the ABC countries, they were the most powerful and wealthy countries in South America at the time. They were able to settle the issues between the two nations at the Niagara Falls Peace Conference. They went and talked in across the border from Buffalo in Canada, I guess. Well, you know what? I don't know. They must have done it on the Buffalo side. That's my guess. There's two sides of the Niagara Falls, the Canadian and the U.S. side. The Canadian falls are more impressive, if I'm not mistaken, or at least the view from that side. All right, reading on. As an immediate reaction to the military invasion of Veracruz, several anti-U.S. riots broke out in Mexico, Argentina, Chile, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Guatemala, and Uruguay. Let's fucking go. U.S. citizens were expelled from Mexican territory. Some had to be accommodated in refugee campuses at New Orleans, Texas City, and San Diego. Even the British government was privately irritated because they previously agreed with Woodrow Wilson that the U.S. would not invade Mexico without a prior warning. I got a guy on Twitter calling me a tanky and ultra-left right now. And they're calling me a fascist. Fucking idiots. All right. The military invasion of Veracruz was a decisive factor in favor of keeping Mexico neutral in World War I. Mexico refused to participate with the U.S. in its military excursion in Europe and guaranteed German companies they could keep their operations open, especially in Mexico City. Nevertheless, the tension between the U.S. and Mexico was great enough that the German government offered to help Mexico reconquer territory lost to the U.S. in the Mexican-American War in exchange for Mexican soldiers to help Germany in World War I. The Mexican government refused this offer. As an aside, I'm currently studying Spanish using Duolingo, and the first country other than Mexico that you learn the name of is Germany. It's Alemania. That's hilarious. I'm like, why do I know the German name for the Spanish name for Germany? But I studied German for 2 years and I never learned the German name for Mexico. What's happening here with Duolingo? All right, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson considered another military invasion of Veracruz and Tampico in 1917 and 1918 so as to take control of the Tehuantepec Isthmus and Tampico oil fields, but this time the new Mexican president, Venustiano Carranza, gave the order to destroy the oil fields in case the Marines tried to land there. And that, I think, draws a lot of comparisons to Dune with Lisan al-Gaib. That's what he did. He's like, I'll blow it up. I got the nukes now. That's what he did at the end of the first movie. It's incredible. All right. And that's the rise and decline report for the day. I hope you enjoyed it.